Fired up. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen, and I am the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net, and I teach Black women African-centered wellness, self-love, and sobriety. Hi, thanks for joining me, everybody. So today's topic is I'm going to be reading again from another portion of this lovely book that we're doing in the book club this week. But before I get into the reading and the content and everything, hi Liz, thanks for joining. I am going to be sharing, first of all, for those of you that don't know any of my work, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about why I got into this work, and then I'm going to be doing a little bit of housekeeping. So for those of you that don't know anything about me, I came into doing this work in 2009. I went into recovery for dysfunctional relationships. I was addicted to dysfunctional people. I was either diving into dysfunctional relationships or I was avoiding them like the plague, one of the two, but both were dysfunctional. So anyway, I went into 12-step recovery, had an amazing time, but realised that there was no cultural context. I didn't understand how to apply the idea of what it means to be a black woman to my healing process, my recovery process. So I ended up getting obsessed, reading loads of books, and I had loads of my own therapy and stuff like that, which was amazing. And then I started joining the dots, and that's how I started sharing on creating this platform, because I just got so much insight and so much stuff just started clicking for me around my self-confidence and understanding why I behaved the way I behaved and what was going on in my family and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it just was really great. And then other people started understanding I helped other people understand their own stuff, and it just became a very powerful way to share what I was learning. And that's how this platform got started. I just started sharing a lot more publicly, and more people started asking me for my support around different things, and that's just basically how it started. So I'm really honoured and grateful now to be on this platform sharing all of this stuff with you. So that's a little bit about me, if you didn't know my story. So in terms of housekeeping, this Saturday at 9:30 London time is the book club. Okay, so the book that we're studying is this amazing book here, All About Love by Bell Hooks. Okay, now this book is basically, we talk about all different aspects of love. We take a chapter within each session. We read the chapter, we share on it, we do sister sharing time, and I also pull questions and things out of the chapter. We'll pull out the topics and some of the key bits that are in the chapter. Sometimes I'm doing these live streams, obviously, on some of the things that have come out of the chapter. And we also share about them as well, and I share tools. There's a feelings check-in, there's a Q&A. So if anybody's having any other stuff that they want to talk about, maybe it's related to the text, sometimes it's other things as well, they get an opportunity to actually ask me questions, especially with all the stuff going on at the moment around the pandemic, around the coronavirus. So if you are looking for a safe space, a safe, boundaried, loving sisterhood space for you to come and read the book and learn how, it's all about self-love. Actually, the topic that we're doing this week is self-love. So if you're struggling with self-love around all of the stuff that's been going on, you're in self-isolation and you're struggling to know how to take care of yourself, how to love yourself, how to nurture yourself at this time, then click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net, and join me this Saturday. Okay, I'm just gonna have to plug in my thing because I don't want my iPad to die on me, so just give me a moment. Okay, right, so that's that. So done the housekeeping, done that. So 3 things to remember on the broadcast. Number 1, if you've got any questions about anything that I'm sharing, drop them in the comments, or you can send me a direct message. If you know anybody that's struggling with self-love, okay, and needs some support around how to love themselves, share it with them, tag them. Okay, and the 3rd thing to remember is I share obviously my best practices, I share my experience, hope and tools that I've learned over the years, and should not be used as a substitute for seeing a licensed mental health professional. If you are looking for a licensed therapist, then you need to go to the Black and Asian Therapist Network, that's in the UK, okay, and they've got loads of great therapists. I've used that organisation for years to pick my therapists and stuff. So it's the Black and Asian Therapist Network. You need to go there and find a licensed mental health professional. Okay, great, a licensed therapist, I should say. Right, so that's all of the housekeeping, everything else. So now we're going to get into the content. Okay, so I'm going to read a little patch from chapter 4, which we're going to be studying this Saturday, which the chapter's called Commitment, Let Love Be Love in Me. So basically it's about self-love, okay, overall. So the first bit of the chapter, the first bit of the bit that I'm reading, she says, self-love cannot flourish in isolation, okay? And then the other bit I wanted to focus on, she says, simply learning how we've acquired feelings of worthlessness rarely enables us to change things. It is usually only one stage in the process. I, like so many other people, have found it useful to examine negative thinking and behavioural patterns learned in childhood, particularly those shaping my sense of self and identity. However, this process alone did not ensure self-recovery. Okay, so I want to talk to you about, we'll talk a bit more about the, this is the bottom bit in a minute, but I want to focus for a minute on the self-love cannot flourish in isolation conversation. Okay, so for many of us, I know I speak to so many sisters around this topic, around they might have been in reading self-help books for years. I read self-help books for years. I was there for years before I actually got any help because I was afraid to connect with other people. I didn't know where to look. I didn't have a clue where to look. Hi Zena, thanks for joining. I didn't have a clue where to go. I didn't have a clue where to look. I didn't see anybody out there who was kind of saying anything that kind of really resonated with me, who looked like me. And so I ended up doing a lot of it by myself, and I actually read a lot of books written by white women, to be honest with you, at the time, all those years ago. I just used to read books about that white women had written because I never saw anybody else that looked like me, and that's kind of, maybe that's the same reason why, you might be doing the same thing. Oh yes, Iyanla Vanzant, I didn't kind of discover her until later on. But yeah, so Iyanla Vanzant is one of them. I've got my own kind of feelings about Iyanla Vanzant. I think she's done some amazing work, but sometimes I do think that she traumatizes. I think sometimes anyway, that's a whole nother broadcast to kind of explain about that. But sometimes I do feel that she takes her clients further than is appropriate for them to go. A lot of them they're going through a lot of trauma, and you can't heal trauma in staying around someone's house for 5 days. God bless her. I think she's done some amazing work, but that's my personal opinion. I think she takes people too far before they're ready. You can't heal trauma in 5 days or however long she's with them. Anyway, that's another conversation. But apart from her, there's not an Oprah. Obviously we've got Oprah, but there's not really any, there's not really that many other people out there doing the work, So I found that doing the work a lot of by myself or reading books, I found that I just stayed in my head a lot of the time. I found that I was stuck in my own thoughts because I didn't really have anyone to I felt isolated, I felt isolated. And so because I didn't have, because I was in my head so much, I didn't really know how to love myself because I just made myself feel bad because I still didn't feel better. I read the self-help books, nothing really changed. I didn't have any guidance or anything. So I just ended up feeling bad. I just thought it was me. I would shame myself, So I think therapist is that you've got somebody who has got a bit more experience, who's done a lot of the work themselves, who can actually guide you through this process. And that is really, really important. And sometimes it's hard for us as black women to do that because obviously there's so be able to have honest conversations about how they feel, and being anxious about, you know, because they were bullied by you know, the black women in their lives growing up. They felt anxious about coming into another group of black women and what that was going to feel like, and would they be accepted, and is anyone going to judge me, and all of that kind of stuff. But because in my group we have you know, I put that out in the open, and I say, look, this is the reason why you're feeling anxious. This is the reason that I identify, because I had the same feelings, and this is what I did to deal with it. And the space is also open for the other ladies to be able to have that conversation. It just released a huge amount of anxiety for so many of the women. It released a huge amount of anxiety. And, you know, the fact that I have boundaries as well in the group, you know, around the speaking and stuff like that. Because that means that the ladies that, you know, when we're having sister sharing time and stuff like that, there are boundaries around, you know, not speaking when somebody else is speaking, making sure that, you know, you don't comment on whatever anyone else has shared, because it's the truth that is for them, it's their truth, and they have a right to do that. So it's a non-judgmental space. Hi Emily, thanks for joining. It's a non-judgmental space for women to be able to do that. And that's the reason why the women in my group keep coming back, because they know that those boundaries are in place, and they feel safe. They feel safe to share. So having that mirrored by other people in the group, and by somebody else, be it myself or a therapist or a mentor or somebody else that understands those dynamics, that's able to reflect back at you what that stuff looks like in a healthy way, is very, very powerful. Is very, very powerful. And that is the ultimate in self-love, because one of the things that I learned from my therapist, actually, it was a male therapist that I was seeing at the time, a black guy, was that when he was able to kind of give me the space to do that, when he gave me the space, hi Rose, thanks for joining, when he was able to give me a space, a non-judgmental space, to be able to say what I needed to say. And there were times where you know, some of the things that I had to say to him were absolutely excruciating, some of the stuff that I shared with him. And there were so many times when I would say to him, look, I'm just going to shut my eyes and say it, because I don't want you to look at me. I don't want you to look at me when I tell you this thing, because it was just so excruciating to be able to share and be that intimate with somebody, be emotionally intimate with somebody else, that I couldn't even look at him. But because there was no judgment that came back, there was no it was just accepting, and he was empathetic, and he was compassionate. That for me, in the long run, you know, it was kind of like an act of self-love, because he modeled that for me. He gave me the space to be able to do that. So for me to be able to speak out my truth in such a blunt way was an act of self-love for myself, because I knew that speaking that truth would free me from it. Okay, it would free me from the shame, it would free me from the blocks. So I knew that I had to say that stuff out loud. But because I had a therapist that was able to hold that space for me to be able to do that, you know, it felt very loving. And those were my first experiences of what it meant to actually witness, you know, being able to receive love. Okay, because self-love, the core of self-love is about being able to receive it. You know, and I think that a lot of times, you know, self-love is also about how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself, what you do for yourself on a daily basis, how you nurture yourself, how you nurture your blackness, how you nurture your culture. All of these things are an important aspect of black self-love. But one of the core things within that is being able to allow yourself to receive love from other people, and that can manifest itself in different ways. Having a therapist, having a group, allowing yourself to trust, or to learn, or to try something, to be vulnerable with somebody that you think might be able to help you, allowing yourself to receive that help, to receive that love, to receive that sisterhood, is such a precious act of self-love. And so many of us have been so wounded by our past, have been wounded by, you know, mother-daughter relationships, by our siblings, that it feels just so raw. That wound can often feel so raw that we just can't fathom, you know, being in a space where somebody is going to allow them to be themselves, you know. And that this is one of the reasons why I work so hard and I share so honestly about a lot of this stuff. Hi Marvin from Dope Black Dads. Got to check out Marvin from Dope Black Dads as well. He's doing some amazing work. But yeah, a bit of a sidetrack there. But yeah, it's important to, self-love is an important thing. Okay, self-love is an important thing, and you cannot do it in isolation. Okay, if you really want to flourish, you have to be willing to get vulnerable and do it with other people. It might be, to be gentle around it. It might be that you maybe work with a therapist to start off with. Sometimes working within a group is just too overwhelming for people. And I think that's what happened to me. Did I start with a therapist? I did a bit of both, actually. But I initially started going to the recovery meetings and the recovery rooms because it was free to do recovery meetings. I didn't have to pay. Obviously, therapy is expensive. I did pay for therapy as well, but it is expensive. Real talk. Not everybody can afford therapy. But for me, I prioritised my therapy over a lot of other things because I knew that the benefit that I would get back from it. I knew that I had to change the patterns. I had to change the dysfunctional behaviours that I was engaged in. I knew that I wanted to change the type of relationships that I kept diving into that weren't good for me. So for me, it was non-negotiable. I had to go to therapy. It was that simple. But I used, going to recovery as well was good because I was able to learn how to build relationships. I learned how to build trust. I learned how to start trusting myself. I learned what it meant to be a human being. I learned what it meant to set boundaries. I learned what it meant to feel my feelings. Recovery for me was such a powerful place to learn all of those things. And it was just, that's where I really learned to start really learning to love myself, because even when I didn't love myself, I still kept showing up. So even when I didn't feel like I loved myself, the fact that I was choosing behaviours that were loving meant that at some point in my healing, that stuff was going to get absorbed. That stuff was going to it would go into my cells sooner or later, and it would work sooner or later. But sometimes you just have to show up even though it doesn't feel like anything's working. It doesn't feel like anything's working sometimes when you show up. You just think, oh, well, I've done that, but I still feel like crap. You still have to keep doing it. So Zine is saying, I have been triggered as unlovable during this social distancing. People avoiding eye contact, giving a wide berth. It has triggered feeling rejected by folk. I had to reach out yesterday. Oh my God, that is such a good point. And you know what, Zina? Your act of self-love was reaching out. Okay? That in of itself is self-love. So when you love yourself, it doesn't mean you don't get triggered. You still get triggered. But what the difference is, what you just said there, is that you were able to recognise what was underneath the trigger. Okay, you recognised that your abandonment stuff was getting triggered. Okay, your abandonment stuff was getting triggered because people were giving you the wide berth or whatever, and then you realised that you needed to speak to someone, so you reached out. Self-love is not always about the big gestures. It's the little things. It's the self-awareness. It's you understanding, oh my God, I feel like all my rejection stuff's come up. I really need to talk to someone. That is you recognizing your needs and then taking action to do it. These little acts of self-love are sometimes they're the most simplest, but sometimes they can be the most difficult, because people sometimes see self-love as, I'm going to paint my nails, or I'm going to have a Epsom salt, I'm going to have a bath, or those things are all good. Those things are all good and they do help. But the real power in self-love is being able to observe when things feel uncomfortable. And then you make choices to do things that are going to meet your need, that are going to nourish you. So what you just said there, Zini, was a really powerful example of how deep your self-love is, because you are really recognising and honouring who you are as a human being, especially during these difficult times. Social distancing, it's gonna bring up so much, especially for us as black people, because we already feel rejected by society. So the fact that we're isolated now, we can't go outside, we're not allowed to go out and do whatever, means there's just more isolation on top of what's already going on. You know what I mean? And it is a long journey. It is a long journey, and it is going to take time for us to come out of this. Not just physically, even when we're allowed to go outside, the psychological recurrences of this is going to go on for a while. So it's important that you really use this time that we have now to really take care of ourselves, and to find the courage to reach out to people that we feel comfortable with, and to really give ourselves permission to self-nurture, and to not do this stuff in isolation. We're already isolated. We're already in self-isolation. Okay, so reaching out with the way that you can to people who can help you is a real act of self-love in this time of self-isolation. Okay, I'm going to have to leave it there for today. I've got another meeting at 2 o'clock, so I'm going to have to pop off. But if anyone's got any other questions, or they're struggling with the isolation and you want to, you need a group, or you need some support, if you want one-on-one support, you can click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. I do offer a one-to-one peer group support, so you can see me one-on-one if that's suitable for you. If you want to join me for the book club this Saturday, where we're going to be talking all about self-love and the meaning of self-love, and how you can really begin to empower yourself in these difficult times, that's Saturday morning at 9:30 London time. You can also find details about the book club there. Any other questions or anything else, you can just send me a direct message, or you can drop them in the comments below, because I do actually read the replay. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next time. All right, take care. Bye.